Good evening, everyone. This is Saturday night, EQNext with Zapranoth. And this week we'll go over some of the changes that came in with the server upgrades. First off, they added a lot of new biomes, well, new continents with a couple of new biomes. The new continents they added also included the tundra biome and the old growth biome. With that then, they also have tropical and tundra with tunnel. So there are a couple of things that are mixed around. One of the things you might want to consider checking before you port at the portal area is that by default it looks like they're putting Courage server first. So make sure if you want to stay on your home server, if you're moving to one of the new continents, that you make sure that your server is selected. Again, by default, Courage is being selected when you open up the portal. That's made for a lot of people getting onto the wrong server and not being able to find their claims afterwards. So anyway, speaking of claims, another huge addition is adding on to your primary claim. They're allowing you to create additional claim flag, and that is on your forge. So let's take a look at the forge here. The attached claim flag, again showing up in recipes on your forge, and I believe this can be made on the stone forge, although I've got the amaranthine forge here. Now you're limited to 2 additions, although you can see I can create an additional 4 claim flags. You're limited to 2 additions. And here are the recipe contents: elemental tin and tin, agate, tourmaline, some aquamarine, elemental iron, and iron ingots. Thank goodness they made this little change where you can actually see the iron ingots. It was one that was scrolled off to the bottom, so they've already fixed that. So once you create 2 claim flags, while standing in your own claim, you can open up, and I've already done this so I can't really show you. I'll open up the map. You can add a claim adjacent to your initial claim. It'd be above and below, and to each of the 4 sides as well. Once you get your first additional claim down, then you can walk over to that claim and add a second one if you'd like, or just add it to the initial claim as well. But you notice that I added one above my first expansion claim. And it looks like the rules behind that is if these are in your buffer zone, you can go ahead and add them. And you notice that initially some claims kind of got stacked on one another. This claim behind me here is really, really close, and I haven't seen any building going on that claim, but at least now I can be assured that he's not going to expand forward on top of mine. That doesn't show up very often, but it was a concern on this particular tall mountain. I've noticed that some claims have moved to some of the new continents, freeing up some space on, I'm on Overlook, on Liberation. But there hasn't been a lot of movement. A lot of the claims are still in their same places. And notice there's not too many who have done the additional claim expansion either. Looks like about a dozen or so on our server, or on our continent, sorry. Okay, and there's a few other additions they made, and these are more in the way of tool additions or changes, how things work. The first one is a selection tool. Let me run up to my patio here. Okay, the selection tool, if you were just doing one voxel, was kind of difficult to work with because the arrows that were showing for the movement of the selection tool kind of interrupted being able to select any of the sides of something as small as one voxel. So now what they've done is using the shift key adds the arrows, select them, and move the voxel, making it much, much simpler to do. Let's expand this just a little bit. The other thing they did was the use of the control key will select the opposite side of your cube. Now that's a little bit different than what you used to before this last update, but it works pretty well. You can see me moving my selection, but I'm also using that to push to talk on my microphone, so I can't really do both at once here. The next thing they did was they made a change to the smoothing tool. Actually, a couple of changes. So let's get some material in our selection box here. Using the Alt key, I just selected the wood. So now we have a wood block here. Now selecting our smoothing tool and making sure the entire selection area is highlighted. You no longer have to create space around your object like you had to with the selection tool before. You can go ahead and just start smoothing it down. So that works fairly similar to what we were used to in the past until you get down to one voxel, and then there's a little bit of a problem with that. Let me create a selection area here. Hold on just a moment. Okay, I'm just making a quick grid here. Then moving the selection area back over the grid. Now before the update, you could smooth this down 10 or 12 times before you got to a point where the voxels were about as small as you could really work with. Now, using the smoothing tool just once, drops it down quite a bit. Using it twice already has it so thin. And 3 times, it's so small it's quite distorted. I have mixed feelings about this, and I think they're actually going to change it. Change it back so you've got multiple levels again. But it's something you can still work with. Just not as easy, not as many levels as you used to have. Now they really haven't fixed the placement tool yet. As you can see, it's very difficult to get one little tiny voxel in place here. Okay. Again, it's not as easy to work with as it was prior to this update. And you notice what I went through to make this particular grid. The same thing last week created this type of grid. So definitely something we'll have to get used to as builders. Now we'll go ahead and delete this. So again, on the selection tool, Shift and Control are the two key pushes that you'll use to control the selection tool these days. The next thing that changed, it's kind of a subtle thing, but something you definitely need to get used to, is your movement. Moving up a hill now is not as easy as it was prior to the update. Notice I'm just getting stuck here on a hill that typically you would kind of float up before. Slowly, yes, but at least you'd be moving. So something you'll have to get used to. Keeping a grappling hook in your back pocket is a good way around it. Now let's talk about the changes in the grappling tool. Before, if you're grappled in a grappling position, you could use the left mouse button to pan your camera up and down and left and right. But you notice the left and right are not moving the camera any longer. It's kind of stuck in place. You can use the left mouse button now to move your camera around, unless you have a tool selected. Let me get up the slope here a little bit. Okay, now without a tool selected, I can still move my camera around with the left mouse button. Can't do it on the right mouse button except for up and down. As soon as I select a tool, now I can't use the left mouse button to move the camera at all. Okay, so if you haven't invested in a grappling tool, now would be a great time to do that. Waiting for the server to catch up with me here. Well, sorry about that, folks. A little bit of trouble with the ISP connection. My neighborly AT&T provider. But we're back. I was just finishing up talking about the grappling hook changes. So that's the majority of the tool changes and most of what we found in game that changes your movement. Okay, another thing that they added was a lot of recipes. If you take a look at your forge, they added all the trees, rocks, and plants that they typically have in the game. So for me, instead of going to old growth forest, I brought the old growth forest to me. You can make these huge trees. And this is what you get. This is old growth forest. And notice that these trees, the old growth, each of them have faces in them near the bottom. Really cool. And these go to the top of my claim and to the top of the claim I have stacked on top of that. So they are very, very. But notice also they included a lot of the small plants, the flowers, the ferns, vines, some of the fungus. Everything is now buildable. Most of it takes just plain wood logs. Not all of it, but most of it does. So we'll craft some of these and just take a look at what they are like. Using the P key will keep these upright for you as you place them. And it's just the same typical thing where you can use the mouse wheel on your mouse to rotate. Use the tab key to change to a move instead of a rotate. Notice if you don't use the P key, these will try to follow the contour of your property. Oh, that's a little bit larger than I expected. I'll have to make an adjustment on that. I've actually always wanted to get some of those red flowers in here. So anyway, that's only some of the recipes that they gave you. So there's a lot of things to play around with this week. Okay, I'm going to turn on my claim boundaries here. Okay, now you can see the original claim here on the right and my two expansion claims on the left stacked. And those old growth forest trees go all the way to the top. I haven't had much time to do any work so far after the change, getting my claim expanded. But I did put in these steps. So we'll carefully get to the top. This was pretty fun to do with the change in the grappling tool, I'll tell you. One of the things I will be attempting to do is make some sort of a fine grill to put between these two corner posts all the way up, which will make it a little bit easier, faster going without falling. If you really want to speed up your ascent, you can of course use your grappling tool. Well, it looks like we've got some problems beyond my control tonight. Great timing that. I've been online all day. But I guess it just goes with the territory. Okay, I've just reached the top of my first claim, so there's quite a ways to go yet. And here we're getting into the tree canopy, of course. I think it's fun to walk through, try building through. Stop and take a look at the view here. Almost there. And here we are at the top. You can see I'm almost to the very top of my second claim. And with that then, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the claim boundaries. And you can see a nice panorama of some of the other builds that happen to be on top of the landscape here. In that direction, towards the mesa. That's pretty much the edge of the map. So we're pretty close. Across the way, you see this cottage here. That is Aldora, also in Mog. And back this direction, just a little ways, there's a nice treehouse setup. And another one where someone has built completely underground. Again, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this. I know I'm going to continue building out a tower here, but I don't know what it's going to look like just yet. Hopefully this time next week I'll have a good preview going for you. In that direction is the portal at the center of the map. Just beyond that Rise. I'm going to log in and talk a little bit about the roadmap and where they're at on that. Most of the upcoming changes have to do with community. And you can catch the roadmap on the EQNext Landmark forum. But just quickly go through it here. They're wanting to put in claim ratings. I've talked about that before. But basically this is going to be so that players can come around to your claim and give it a thumbs up, thumbs down type of thing. And they're aiming for the week of the 19th for that. One of the things that has been missing so far are key configurations, letting you map keys where you want them rather than the basic key mapping that they give you. And again, they're looking at that with some UI changes around the 19th, so a couple of weeks from now. Another thing that's coming the week of the 19th looks like they are going to put in group harvesting bonuses so that you can go out as a group and collect raw material a little bit faster. That would definitely help when you're trying to go out and collect burl wood. Keep in mind that the beta wipe is coming up somewhere around the end of the month, so although it doesn't sound like you're going to lose your templates, it does sound like you're going to lose everything else, which means we're all going to be out collecting burl wood again. Moving around the world. Moving around the world, they're going to do a teleport to claim, teleport to hub, and teleport to friend. And they do have their friends list now so that you can at least accept a friend request. So that portion of the game is getting a little bit better. I'm glad they're not going to put in a lot of teleporting. Although it might take some time and such, it's much better just to be able to move naturally rather than teleporting everywhere. And they have talked about the smoothing tool. They're going to change that again, still needing some adjustments. Hopefully we'll see that in the week of the 12th. Claim permissions, that's something that will allow your friends, or enemies for that matter, if you give them permission, to come into your claim and maybe do some cooperative building. That's supposed to be the week of the 12th as well. And the week of the 19th, it looks like they're going to let us have more than one claim, not just attached claims, but more than one base claim. So again, the week of the 19th. Okay, let's take a quick tour of my claim and see. I like to build big. Some people like to build small. I'm going to show you the difference. This huge tower, see it on the way down? All right. There we go. Quick elevator ride down. the rest of my claim, right now I just have like this obelisk tower in the back. I threw it up in just a few minutes actually, with the idea that I was going to do a few more things with it. Nice gold center. And then you've seen my meeting hall before, but I'll just go through it again here real quick. It's basically a one room meant for a meet. If you like to play elves or dwarves, makes a good meeting hall. Downstairs is what I call my workshop. You can see my saw table, and the rest of my tool. And although they don't have other races in the game yet, once they have it, hopefully I'll be able to play a dwarf. Out of my workshop, I created a mine. Come down these tiles. And you can see I put a little bit of color, the basic biome, silver, tourmaline, some copper, topaz, just a little bit of color. And some of my earlier builds were actually left down here just a little bit. I think this is my third attempt. So it kind of looks like I have been digging through some ruins. Continuing on, you'll see a little bit more color. And notice most of these walls look like, well, dirt. You can change that with the paint tool. Just by selecting the paint tool, use the Alt key for stone, or you can select something here out of the materials window. And they've been adding some really nice stone texture. And I really like this ancient forest rock, so let's do some of that. Use the C key, change this to your sphere. Helps out getting on the surface a little bit easier than the square tool. So it just changes the look down here a little bit. So we don't have to look at so much dirt. And of course, mining a little bit too deep, I stumble on some ancient ruins. I like this build. It's actually been down here through most of my claim. Once I discovered how to do archways. Just a fun build. I'm not done with it yet, but it is on hold. I have to work on the tower first. And with the changes in movement, it's easier to grapple up rather than walk. And now we're back to the workshop. One thing I do like is that in the dark, a lot of these lights and textures change. They become less flat, more textured than they do in the daylight. And I'd like to see underground, anyway, that they keep it at a twilight rather than increasing the luminosity during the daytime underground. So let's go take a look at our neighbor. Again, notice that I like to build big. Aldora's over here. And she likes to build small. This is her attached claim. She really hasn't had a chance to do anything with it yet. But you'll notice she puts in a lot of plants and a lot of small detail. I'll open up her door. And again, she does a lot of things with props that I don't do yet. And you gotta like these umbrellas. I promise I won't turn on the torches this time. But she does sculpture. And like I said, these umbrellas that she came up with are pretty. Also the sculpture of the fire. She'd created that. And the fish sculpture. And she created that fireplace in the corner. And does quite a bit with different colored gems and such for her window. Now none of these are transparent yet, but with the reflection of light on them, they almost look that way sometimes. She created these couches, put pillows. Nice heavy table. Made out of ruby, I think. Come raid her place if you need ruby. Little tiles. And notice there's more than one way to use a prop. take a look at the textures on the wall. See if you can identify what those actually are. She does a cool job of doing props and adding plants to her. And just the little touches of textures to highlight her windows and doorways. Really cool stuff. Smaller version of that giant obelisk I uncovered downstairs. And again, just some really cool stuff that you can do with props rather than the typical way they were designed to be used. The design process is up to you, not the game developers. And that definitely shows here. Okay, with that then, before AT&T disconnects me again, I think I'm going to call it an evening. Next up will be Gluttons for Punishment. They are going to be doing some operations in Star Wars: The Old Republic. Next week, hopefully, I'll show you what I've done with this crazy tower. And good night.